Ever wondered what size portfolio you need to derive a certain amount of income? Well, in this video, we're going to run through a method where you can determine what that needs to look like. Hi, thanks for joining me in this video. My name's Tim. I'm a property investment advisor and a property investment educator. Now, early on in my property investment journey, I realised that a lot of people include property investment in their wealth creation strategy because of the potential income that can be obtained. And for me, I liked that, and I had an interest, obviously, in property investment. But where I kind of hit a hurdle, if you like, was that when I started discussing property investment with people and posed the question, well, how many properties do I need? Often the answer was, well, buy as many as you can. And that really didn't sit that well for me. So I stumbled across or came across this method of being able to determine as an estimate what it would need to look like. What sort of portfolio size would I need? What's the value of that portfolio to then deliver a particular level of income? And so I just want to point out, though, that this is an estimate. I'm not providing financial advice. Any financial advice that you require around property investment, obviously you should sit down with a suitably qualified professional. So I'm going to run through this method and show you just how you can get an idea of what it might look like for you, depending on what you want to achieve as far as an income, and then again what that may look like in portfolio size based on the value of properties that you acquire. Okay, so to get an estimate of what we may need in retirement, we can think of how we're living today. So if you're living a comfortable lifestyle now, then you can, as a guide, use around about 75% of your current income. And that takes into consideration, assumes that in retirement that your expenses will be less. So you may have paid your mortgage off, you may have any dependents, kids might have left home. So around about 75% of your current income. Another way to look at it, or another way to get an idea of what it might need to look like, is that the ASFA retirement standard for March 2020 says that for a couple aged 65 to live a comfortable retirement will require just over $60,000 a year, and to live a modest lifestyle will require just over $40,000 a year. So that might give you a little bit of a guide as to what figure you might look to aim for. Okay, so in this calculation, we're going to use the factor 20 method. Now, the gross return on investment has two components. It's the capital growth and also to the income yield. Now, if the capital growth keeps pace with inflation, then typically the net yield will be about 5% gross. Okay, so by using the factor 20, it's going to assume that our capital base maintains pace with inflation, and that way our capital base is preserved. We don't need to eat into it, or we don't need to pull down any of that capital to provide ourselves with income. Now, that way it will preserve our assets so that down the line, if you want to pass on your assets to anybody else, kids, whoever it may be, then you've got that option. Now, if that's not something you're interested in, or you don't have kids, you're not fussed about holding on to your assets, you can use a lower factor. So perhaps instead of using factor 20, you could use 15. But you do need to then realise that each time you may need to eat into that capital or draw down on that capital to fund your lifestyle. Okay, so how many properties do we need? So we've got to keep in mind that all these calculations are in today's dollars. So we're going to start with the desired net income. So this is the income after tax. So let's put in a figure of $65,000, and therefore the gross income before tax will be $78,750, and that's basically multiplying the net income by 1.25. So 65,000 multiplied by 1.25 will give us that figure of $78,750. Now, the nest egg required will be the gross income figure of $78,750 multiplied by a factor of 20. And that will provide an answer or an amount of $1,575,000. Now, if we move on to working out how many properties do we need, so we're going to go with a value of a property of $400,000. So if we divide the nest egg required figure of $1,575,000, we divide that figure by $400,000 being the value of one property, then that will actually then provide us with a figure of how many properties we actually need to achieve that gross income. So 1,575,000 divided by 400,000 determines that we'll need 4 properties to achieve that income. So for $400,000 properties, will achieve a nest egg required figure of 1,575,000, and that will then obviously then equate to that desired net income of 65,000 a year. Okay, so that's a formula. Obviously, being a formula, you can tweak and change the figures that you include in that formula. You can obviously do it to suit your own scenario, or in fact do what ifs. However, what I think it does do is provides us with some sort of idea of what it can look like. So rather than just going out and purchasing properties willy-nilly and hoping that it works out and not really having any real understanding of what it could look like, I think this way at least provides us with a bit of an idea of how we can plan out that property acquisition, and again having an end result to aim for. So it's not dollar perfect, it's not meant to be, and again it's not financial advice. You can sit down with a suitably qualified professional and they can work through these numbers and maybe tighten them down a little bit. But again, I think just to give a little bit of clarity around what it can look like, I think it's an exercise that's well worth doing. So look, thank you for joining me in this video. I hope that you found it interesting. And look, if you haven't already subscribed and you feel happy to do so, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. And I hope again that this has opened your eyes a little bit around the fact that there is a way of moving forward property investment and having some sort of end goal to achieve. So all the best with your journey, and thank you again for joining me in this video.